Everyone, and welcome to your webinar, CCH Integrator 2017.5 Product Update. I'm Tony and I'll be your moderator today. Presenting today from Wolters Kluwer is Jim Edwards, Director for Corporate Reporting Solutions, and Briony Campbell, General Manager Group Product. In this webinar, Jim and Briony will take you through the main enhancements following the recent upgrade. You can submit questions via the Questions tab at any time throughout the webinar. I think we're ready to begin, so Jim, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Tony, and welcome everyone, and thanks very much for your time on today's session. So this release we're talking through today is the last of the releases for 2017. So as you can see, the .5, so we've had 5 major software releases throughout the year. One of the things that we saw in 2017 and will continue to see in 2018 is a much higher rate of innovation of our technology. So that means more software releases and a sort of a higher frequency of software releases out to you with more enhancements. So we're investing a lot more time now to try and improve the rate at which we're evolving the technology in response to some of the increased compliance pressures that you're facing, and equally some of the opportunities that we've got to leverage newer technologies. So in today's session, we'll run through a little bit, so a fairly high-level overview of some of the updates in 2017.5. So Briony will take you through some of the detail in those major functional areas. And then in closing, we'll talk about what the plan is for 2018. So some of the things we've got planned coming out in Q1 and then throughout the remainder of the year. So that's probably enough of an intro. Over to you, Briony.
Great, thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. The highlights that I'd like to cover off today in terms of the 2017.5 release in the area of automation, Websheets, tax accounting, checklists and questionnaires, and general enhancements. And as Jim said, we'll also cover off what's coming in the future. In terms of the platform overview, we went through it in the last webinar, but I think it's worthwhile just covering off really quickly in this webinar is we think about Integrator in 3 separate areas. We have core layer, we have a design layer, and we have a solutions layer. And it really is that design layer in particular and core area that we're focused on in this release. But typically in the next 12 months in particular, you'll see us concentrating more and more on that design layer within Integrator, allowing clients to design their own solutions and work papers. So in the area of automation, there are a number of enhancements that we brought through in 2017.5. One of them in particular was in relation to Websheets and being able to update workbooks via bulk processes. So that is, with Websheets now, you can update workbooks on a bulk copy, bulk update, or bulk update with latest template changes. So those processes are now available and were previously available with Integrator on the classic part of the application. We've also got an update to the bulk upload trial balance. So again, in the past for Integrator Classic, clients would upload or could upload and create workbooks, copy of workbooks forward, roll forward for their trial balance. You can now do that in Integrator for Websheets. So really the benefit of this is being able to provide automation to speed up, and save time for users. The other enhancement that is a big one for the application, and it really is a game changer for our application, is the ability to upload data from Excel files in bulk into Websheets. So whether it's for one entity or whether it's for multiple entities, and whether it's for one tab in an Excel workbook or whether it's for multiple tabs being uploaded into Integrator, you can now bring that in bulk into the application and create your workbooks. So the benefit to that is if you have service firms in particular, but it's equally applicable for corporates as well. If you have an Excel workbook that you work from and gather your data from, you may have the data on one tab or on other several tabs. You can now bring that data into Integrator, into the Websheets within Integrator, so one Websheet or many Websheets. So it's an amazing piece of functionality that users will be able to take advantage of in this release, and it really will provide a hell of a lot more flexibility for clients and be able to obviously save a large amount of time. So it's a really exciting one.
Yeah, and one other point just to add to that too, I think where we're heading to with the integrator is we're trying to make further advancements around the user interface to make it very conducive for data collection, so that you can open up the application to financial controllers or whoever's feeding the data into the tax compliance and reporting outputs. However, there are certain situations where it's really, really difficult to engage people to actually log into a web application to provide that data, and that's where importing this data from Excel is really, really important. So, yeah, as Briony said, with this enhancement, we've already got a number of corporates and service firms that are looking at using this to streamline the collection of all sorts of tax attributes they're having to gather from their subsidiary operations from right around the world, or from people who sit outside of their own organisation. So it's a really good feature which will help improve and streamline the process.
Okay, in addition to the automation enhancements, so there's another one that we've done also within the application, which is on the mapping drill down screen for Websheets. Previously, when a user had uploaded an Excel file, they didn't have clarity or transparency around which worksheet name or tab of an Excel file to which the actual data related. So we've now included that feature within the drill down for Websheets. So in addition to the automation features, we've got Websheet features specifically. And previously within Integrator, we have a quick menu on the toolbar that's available to be able to provide, I guess, faster navigation within the application in terms of updating workbooks, copying or rolling forward workbooks. We've now extended the quick menu on the toolbar of a Websheet to allow for Websheets to be included as an option. So to be able to update the workbook status for Websheets is now in that quick menu. So as opposed to having to navigate to the workbook selection screen and then doing several clicks through, you can now quickly update the workbook status via the quick menu for Websheets. In addition to that, within Websheets, we've also allowed users in 2017.5 to be able to edit rolled forward cells in a Websheet. So prior to this change, all cells on roll forward into the next period were not editable for numeric values. They were for non-numeric values, but not for numeric. We've now enabled that ability within Websheets. There will be a future enhancement within Integrator that we will provide an option at the template level to be able to provide users with the ability to be able to designate whether a particular column or perhaps a cell was editable or is to be editable on roll forward or not. So that will be a future enhancement in the future, but for the moment, all cells are now editable on roll forward for the workbook.
Yeah, and just to give you an example of where that functionality is going to be really useful is for static type disclosures. So disclosures that you're having to produce each year and disclose to the regulators, where you've got numbers that have been disclosed in prior years, we just copy them forward into next year, but you can then overwrite and adjust them. You can also then just run a comparison report as well to quickly compare the current year figures to the prior year figures to see what's changed.
So tax accounting is another area that we've enhanced in 2017.5. Specifically, we've made an enhancement whereby manual entry accounts on the tax-based maintenance schedule with closing tax adjustments will now flow through to the current tax movement schedule. So this will aid the reconciliation of current tax and tax payable for users who use the manual entry accounts on the tax-based maintenance. In addition to that, we've also enhanced our reports to provide additional usability for the Integrator reports. On aggregated reports now, users will be able to see a entity name for all entities that have been, or all workbooks that have been included in the aggregated standard reports. Previously, that wasn't available, which typically for within an organisation, that's okay. A lot of users within an organisation would understand what the workbook itself, which entity it related to, but it made it very difficult for clients to be able to provide that report, say, to a third party, such as an auditor. So what we've done is we've actually enhanced the report to be able to provide transparency over the entity to which the report relates. In addition to tax accounting, we also have updates to checklists and questionnaires within Integrator. So again, it's that design layer within Integrator where clients can create their own questions and checklists and questionnaires. What we've done is we've created a new option to remove review questions from a questionnaire on the copy roll forward options screen. So when you do a copy or when you do a roll forward, you now have the option to be able to remove those review questions from a questionnaire. So this aids in providing, I guess, more accurate data for clients period on period, given that they can remove review questions that may not be applicable in the next period. So it's getting rid of unnecessary information from the workbook and aiding in automation, of processes as you're preparing your workbook calculations.
And just on that point too, we're looking at making a number of further enhancements in the area to improve the, the retention, if you like, of other supporting information behind tax adjustments year on year. So as you're going into a subsequent tax return period, you can easily then reference back to the comments, review comments and notes that were made against that same account in the prior year. So this is really just the first enhancement of a number in that area.
So in addition to the checklist and questionnaire enhancements, we've just got a number of general enhancements that we've done in 2017.5. So prior to 2017.5, notes on workbook papers could not be removed when rolling forward a workbook. We've now enabled that functionality within the application. So again, removing notes that are no longer applicable on roll forward. In addition to that, we've also provided users in 2017.5, we've provided them with an enhancement regarding notes. So we've had some really fantastic feedback from clients in regards to the way that they use Integrator. Knowing that a lot of, people can change organisations over time and they can leave, previously they weren't able to delete notes or edit notes that may no longer be applicable that were created by another user. What we've done is we've added a functional access item within Integrator whereby users can now, if they have that functional access, can either edit or delete another user's notes within Integrator. So again, making it easier for people to prepare their work and update workbooks. So that's a really valuable one for clients, and I think a lot of people will take advantage of that one.
Yeah. And the second change that we've got listed here on this page is in relation to that visual indicator on the screen. This was actually in response to a change that was made in Internet Explorer where it wasn't particularly apparent when Internet Explorer was actually trying to do work and load information from the server. So you'll now see whenever you click on a particular page or run a function within Integrator, you will then get a response from the application to indicate when the system's doing work. So, it's that hourglass type thing popping up on screen. So just make it a little bit more transparent when the system is, when it's doing something, like if you've hit save or if you haven't hit save, it'll give you that feedback.
Great, so that was 2017.5, but I'd like to take everyone through what's coming up in 2018.1, which is currently scheduled for the end of March. Again, these are areas that we're focusing on for this release, tax accounting being one of them, a big one of them. We've got the introduction of an equity allocation schedule to aid in the disclosure of non-P&L movements. So within the Integrator prior to, currently within the application, you are able to make equity adjustments within the application, but they all get lumped into one bucket. There's not a lot of transparency to users in terms of what those adjustments relate to when they're doing their final reporting. So what we've done was we've created an equity allocation schedule, and there will be, 10 buckets in particular, and clients will be able to use those to be able to provide transparency around what those adjustments relate to. So this will be a very valuable feature for clients. We will be making ongoing enhancements around this area. So in terms of reporting, for this release in particular, it's just relating to the schedule. However, in the future, we will have reporting around that as well.
Yep.
So this is very going to be very worthwhile, particularly for globally. Yep. Certainly, we're seeing a lot of clients are wanting to provide more transparency around their equity movements. So.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's from what we've seen, UK and New Zealand markets in particular are very sensitive towards disclosure of those equity movements, and equally some of the large financial institutions in Australia. So yeah, following this as well will be further, eventually, further calculation of the tax accounting journal entry by each one of those sub-equity accounts rather than just at a non-P&L level.
We've also got an aggregated DTA and DTL report coming out in 2018.1. So currently, deferred tax asset and deferred tax liability reports are only available on a single entity workbook basis, but we will be bringing through an aggregated deferred tax asset and deferred tax liability report. So certainly, clients who have migrated, say, from Tax Integrator across to CCH Integrator will now have, those aggregated reports available to them. Another enhancement that we're looking at including in the release is the inclusion of a tax adjustment and gap adjustment column in web-based work papers. So currently within the application, a client can make adjustment via a web-based work paper. The actual overall adjustment that affects the SOTI, or the Statement of Taxable Income, is not transparent until you save the web-based work paper and click back out and onto the balance sheet itself. So we've had, again, some great feedback from clients who are wanting the inclusion of the actual SOTI adjustment within the web-based work paper itself. So we're working on that for 2018.1. In addition to tax accounting, we're also looking at ongoing technical and security updates. So we, as a lot of you are aware, Integrator at the moment only, it works on Internet Explorer. It doesn't currently work for browsers such as Chrome or Edge. What we're doing is some initial cross-browser development work to help us enable that functionality later on in the year. So it is a high priority item for us to enable cross-browser within the application. And so what we'll be doing is some initial steps towards that. Also in 2018.1, we'll be looking at security enhancements. These are just ongoing security enhancements that we do every release. So we're always looking to ensure that the security of the application is sound. And so the security enhancements that we're bringing through is in line with that.
Yeah. And, with the increased amount of security vulnerabilities that are going on the internet now these days, our clients, security organisations are imposing, higher thresholds around applications, whether they be internally implemented or externally hosted. So to ensure that people can continue to use Integrator without an issue, we need to make sure that the corporate IT and security groups internally are satisfied with the amount of rigour and testing that we put around that. So as Briony said, it's just an ongoing thing we have to do with every release.
Definitely. So user interface is another area that we'll be concentrating on for 2018.1. We have at the moment around 470 functional access items within the application, which is a significant amount. And obviously for administrators within the application, it can be overwhelming at times to understand what those functional access items relate to. So what we're doing is we're actually rationalising those down to around about 250. So from an administrator perspective, it'll make it a lot easier to be able to initially set up, but also maintain functional access items going forward.
Yeah, and as part of that rationalisation process, we've simplified a lot of the functional access items. So it's a lot more intuitive, and this is part of a broader program for Integrator to continually simplify the application. One of the challenges that we have with Integrator is that the application is doing a lot, and it's got a lot of functionality, but in some ways it's so functionally rich that it can be an obstacle to adoption or infrequent use of the application. So some financial accountants who don't do tax accounting very often can find it a little bit overwhelming. So we've got a program of enhancements planned, and this is the first of many, to really simplify the application, which again, that'll come up on the next slide. But it's all about trying to make it more conducive for ad hoc use.
Great. So Websheets, again, is an area that we'll be focusing on in 2018.1. We'll be ongoing, we'll be improving the responsiveness, in terms of performance for Websheets. because Websheets are so flexible, you know, that you can have so many columns and so many rows, we need to obviously keep tweaking the application in that area to provide more responsiveness for Websheets. The area that we're focusing on in particular, though, is in regards to subgrid rendering, or embedded tables is another way to think about subgrids. So certainly in service firms in particular, use a high amount of subgrids or embedded tables within the application.
And particularly in the context of where you're trying to collect data from an end user and just present them as one screen rather than a whole lot of different screens for them to go into.
Exactly. So we'll be improving the user experience when it comes to the actual rendering of those subgrids within the application. In addition to that, we're going to provide users with the ability to optionally delete custom accounts on Websheets on the application. So when a client creates a custom account or a sub-account within Websheets at the moment and goes through the mapping process, if they then want to change that mapping and they want to map an account to a different parent account within a Websheet, the process at the moment can be a little bit clunky for clients. So what we're doing is actually improving that area and providing users with the ability to optionally delete those accounts on upload. So it will mean that clients won't have as many clicks within the application and different screens to go into. So again, aiding usability within the application.
Yep. So I just wanted to talk about some items that are very, very high on our list of priorities at the moment that we're working through. And these are at various different stages of design and development. So walking through this now, just before I jump into the detail here, it'd be great to get your feedback as well. So at the end of this session, you know, if there's any point that we've covered here today that you've got questions about or want to know more about, or you've got some opinions you want to share, it'd be fantastic if we could hear from you. So whether that be via an email or a phone conversation with Briony and myself, you know, we'd love to speak to you about it. But anyway, so in terms of things we're focusing on, just running through those now. So in the areas of tax accounting, one thing that we're trying to do with tax accounting is, you know, the tax accounting application is designed on the basis of people entering tax movements. Now, this is very different to the way Tax Integrator operated. So in CCH Integrator, we enter the movement, not the closing balance. And yeah, not surprisingly, we found that some people are finding it more complicated to actually derive the movement. Yeah, entering the closing balance for the tax-sensitive accounts is more natural. So we'll provide an option on the template there to basically make that configurable so that we can flex to both different use cases. We're also going to be enhancing the asset schedule to better accommodate equity and deferred only adjustments, and equally allowing users to with the ability to make tax depreciable adjustments via the web-based work papers. So again, we've got equivalent work papers in Tax Integrator that allow these tax depreciable adjustments on the P&L to then automatically flow through to assets. So we'll implement similar automation as well to streamline use. Now, on the user interface side, as I was saying before, a lot of this is about simplification, modernisation to streamline that adoption and particularly ad hoc use. So with the next couple of releases, you'll start to see a rationalisation of graphics and styles. So you know, there's a lot of icons that are used throughout Integrator. Some of those icons were selected a while ago, and then there's more modern styles and you know, more modern styles which are just easier on the eye and much easier to comprehend. So we'll be looking at we're going through the process right now of replacing all with a very consistent look and feel, which again just makes it more conducive for use. The menu. So at the moment we've got this left-hand menu which gives you access to all the functions in the whole application, but sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. It's always there as did your face. You know, it doesn't need to be there and displayed the whole time, and it actually takes up an amount of sort of the horizontal real estate you've got there on screen. So we're looking at rationalising that and introducing a new menu which will sit across the top as a banner, and it will follow then the workflow process of using the application depending upon how you've configured your workbook template. So a lot more consistent with what you're probably used to seeing in a Microsoft Office type environment. Another point is just around trying to improve collaboration. So as Integrator gets used and adopted by more and more corporations around the world, people are keen to try and integrate Integrator into other parts of their processes and applications. So as part of that, we're building in what we call deep linking, which is essentially an ability for you to then share a link with another end user, which will give them direct access to an individual schedule. So if you wanted to just send a quick link to someone either within or outside your organization who's already a registered user or integrator, but you want to give them a link directly to a specific page or report, you can send them that. And they can just, within one click, once they're authenticated, we'll give them access to that. So that's really useful where people are trying to integrate the detail of integrator back into other related processes. Maybe it's a workflow system or some other sort of desktop or portal. On to the automation area. Now, there's a whole bunch of areas that we're trying to improve automation around to try and strip time out of that tax compliance reporting process. One that a lot of our users have been asking for a long time, particularly our larger clients that are using Integrator, is around streamlining the user and entity administration. So a lot of the bigger corporations who have a lot of registered users end up having to spend a fair amount of their time administering users, newcomers, and people leaving the organization or people changing roles. So we're going to have a new feature that will allow the automated update of that administrative data within the system. Now, it's going to be presented to end users both as an Excel upload. So if you've got that user administration data there available in Excel, you can just upload it and Integrator will follow the rules that are defined in Excel. But equally, we're providing it via web services. So for those of you who already have your IT groups engaged, and some of you will, IT are often the ones who are wanting to push for things like single sign-on and integrating applications with the internal employee directory. You'll be able to enable those interfaces. So then you won't have to have people in the tax function having to administer users. Robotic process automation. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around this area in the last couple of years. There are some great tools out there. We've been trialing some of the various different technologies. There's a lot of them out there. And there's one in particular that we've narrowed down on, which is quite good, but we're really looking at all of the functions that exist within the corporate tax function that are routine in nature, that are executed on Integrator or any of the other related systems that we can automate through RPA. So what we're doing is basically our findings and our learnings that we're finding in our labs, we're going to then share them with all of our customers. And the hope is then that our customers can then basically leverage some of the ideas and the solutions that we've developed and built to then automate those routine processes. So some really simple examples there, roll forward of workbooks from one year to the next, copying of workbooks from one year to the next, uploading and unloading trial balance files. So anything that you'd say is routine in nature and not value adding can be automated by one of these RPA robots. The good thing is that we've found a way in which it can be quite cost effective. And there's a very easy business case for it. So that'll be coming out soon. Equally on the data transformation side, you probably all heard of Bob the Bot that was released last year in around about May of last year. Bob was released to help multinational corporations produce their local file country by country reporting disclosures, the Australian corporations. Now we're extending Bob the Bot to also then support the international dealing schedule preparation, because there's still about 9,000 corporations in Australia who still have to produce an IDS. Same data, just a slightly different disclosure. So we'll be releasing an enhanced version of Bob to support that process, and equally enhancing the transformer so that it can do a lot more automation of data transformation. So it'll still have that nice, simple look and feel and be fairly easy to use, but it's been, we're broadening its use. The last point there is just in relation to corporate income tax compliance. Now, some of you may not be aware, but we already do provide solutions for corporate income tax return preparation on Integrator for Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. But now we're going further. We're going across into Europe. So we've got a team of people and a number of customers that are already using Integrator across Europe and over into the Americas as well. But we're progressively expanding our globalization of the platform to support local compliance. So obviously only relevant for those who are multinational in nature, but there's a number of corporates that are using Integrator here on this side of the planet that are very interested in also trying to streamline and automate aspects of their UK corporate tax compliance. So we'll have a solution there. The last few areas is where we've been looking in the area of our innovation labs. So we've got a bunch of highly educated and innovative people working together to explore newer technology sets and find ways in which we can provide them to you integrated through Integrator. One of the major areas is in relation to Websheets. So Briony was mentioning before about the power of Websheets, and you can essentially use the Websheets framework to collect and calculate and report any kind of data for any kind of finance or tax process. So it's not just limited to direct and indirect taxes. But we're extending Websheets now so that you can essentially import your own spreadsheets to automatically create a Websheet. So now we've got a facility where we can take an existing Excel model that you've been using probably for a number of years, that you trust and that you know has the right functions and formulas in place, directly impact that straight into a Websheet, and within a matter of hours you'll be up and running with a web version of that Excel spreadsheet, but in the controlled integrator environment. Another area where we're making some advancements is around tax data analytics. Now, there are many tools, again, the visualization analysis tools like Qlik and Tableau and Power BI, but we've now got a proven framework in place to allow data that's been collected or calculated in Integrator to get that out into an environment where you can provide ad hoc analysis and reporting via Qlik, Tableau and Power BI. So a number of the service firms are working in this area, and they're working again with a number of people who are already using Integrator. We're looking at providing a standardized service where you can basically get that as part of your arrangement with the Integrator. And then still, use the skills of the service firms to basically leverage, their templates that they've developed and their skills around how to analyze the data. The last point there is just in relation to Office integration. So we are making further advancements around the exchange of data directly from Excel and Word in and out of Integrator. So there's a whole heap of power that's going to come with that, particularly around improving a lot of the ad hoc reporting of the platform, but equally to improve the collection of data directly from Excel and then having that feed directly into the integrated system without having to upload a spreadsheet. So I think that was all we had to cover today. I'm sorry we don't have time for questions on this forum, but as I said before, we'd love to hear from you, and if you could reach out to us, then please drop us an email. So it's jim.edwards@wolterskluwer.com and briony.campbell@wolterskluwer.com. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to speaking to you again in another 12 weeks or so with the next release.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Briony, for today's presentation. If we didn't get a chance to answer all of your questions, we'll make sure to follow up via email or phone. To all of you, have a great day.